Well, hello again, my AP Econers. Welcome to the Unit 3 questions. And again, my encouragement to you all as you go through this quiz is to do the question first, then watch the video as I go over the answer and give the explanation, pause the video, do the next question, and so forth. And so that'll give you good practice. Again, some of these you've already done because you've done them in groups, but hopefully this helps clarify some things. But anyway, let's look at, get going here, look at number 1. An open market operation by a country's central bank to reduce unemployment. So the problem is a recession. What does the Fed want to do in time of recession? They want to put money in the economy. So they're definitely going to buy bonds. So it can't be A, B, or C. When they buy bonds, what happens? It does decrease the interest rate. Interest rate goes down, but that boosts aggregate demand. So number 1 is letter E. Okay, letter E. We want to boost aggregate demand and try to help the economy out. Number 2, the reserve requirement is 10%, so let's stop right there. Our money multiplier is going to be 10. Okay, so you got 10. The central bank sells $10,000 in government bonds on the open market, so they're taking $10,000 out of the economy. Now remember, when they're taking it out of the economy, that money was not necessarily susceptible to the reserve ratio because that only applies to demand deposits. So bottom line is you're going to see a decrease by a maximum of $100,000, which is letter E. Okay, so basically $100,000 is going to be taken out of the economy after you factor in the money multiplier. All right, number 3, good old Fred Jones, good guy. He withdraws $1,000 in cash from his savings account. Okay, so remember, here's how you got to look at this. Remember, you've got M1. And then M2 is M1 plus savings accounts and things like that. So here's how you got to look at this. We start out with, I'll do it in green because it's money. Fred starts out with $1,000 in his savings account. So that's in M2. It's not in M1. When he takes that money out and it goes into M1, now here's the thing, it's still in M2 because M2 consists of M1 plus savings accounts. But now M1 has this additional $1,000. So the best answer here is letter B. So number 3 is B. M1 increases, M2 no change because the money stays in the circle, in the big circle. Okay, that's the best way of visualizing that. All right, number 4, an increase in government spending. Okay, so if we're looking at our money market graph and we've got nominal interest rates and quantity of money. Okay, remember here's our supply of money, here's our demand for money. Okay, so what's this action going to do? An increase in government spending is going to affect the demand for money this way. Okay, demand for money is going to increase. And notice what that does to nominal interest rates. It makes nominal interest rates increase as well. So the best answer to number 4 is A. Okay, so 4 is A, both demand for money and nominal interest rates increase. All right, number 5, you've got this bank balance sheet. Okay, so there's $100,000 in demand deposits. The required reserve requirement is 12%. That means of the $100,000, they have to keep $12,000. Okay, so they have to keep $12,000. Now, they have $15,000, so how much more does this bank have to lend out? They have an additional $3,000. So number 5 is C. Okay, so additional $3,000, which they can lend because they're keeping 15, and they only have to keep 12. All right, number 6, expansionary monetary policy can affect the economy through which of the following change of events? And so the best answer here is letter E, expansionary monetary policy. They're going to buy bonds because that puts money in the economy, and that makes the interest rate go down, as we mentioned a moment ago. Number 7, a reduction in inflation. Okay, now a reduction in inflation, the goal is aggregate demand, you want that to decrease. Okay, you want aggregate demand to decrease. So, the best policy here that would definitely do that would be A, because if the government increases taxes, that makes aggregate demand go down because less money is in people's pockets. And monetary policy, the Fed is going to sell bonds because selling bonds takes money out of the economy as well. Both of those would reduce aggregate demand. Number 8, an increase in government deficit spending can crowd out private investment by, and the answer is D, increasing the real interest rate. And so this, you could look at your loanable funds graph. Here we have real interest rates, quantity of loanable funds. Okay, so what happens when the government engages in deficit spending? It's going to increase the demand for loanable funds. And when you increase the demand for loanable funds, it makes interest rates go up. And then remember, what we talked about in our review is interest rates go up, it hurts private domestic investment spending because businesses are less likely to borrow money to expand and whatnot, and that's what we call crowding out. All right, in the country of agronomia, banks charge 10% on all loans. The rate of interest, the price level, has been 4%. So the real rate of interest, remember, real is always equal to nominal minus inflation. And what did they give us? They gave us nominal and inflation. So the nominal interest rate is 10%, inflation is 4%. That leaves, of course, 6% or letter C. So number 9 is letter C. Number 10, assume the government finances its spending by borrowing from the public. If the government increases deficit spending, first let's do the interest rate thing. We just did that a moment ago. Back at this graph right here, deficit spending makes interest rates go up. Now, there's this little, not often asked question about bond prices, the relationship between interest rates and bond prices, and the bottom line is there is an inverse relationship between the two. Interest rates go up, bond prices go down. So, best answer here to number 10 is letter B. Okay, deficit spending is going to make interest rates go up, bond prices go down because they vary inversely. If a central bank significantly increases its sale of government bonds, so they're selling bonds, they're taking money out of the economy, what would the problem be? Most likely inflation, or letter D, rising price levels. So number 11 is D. That's what they're trying to combat. Number 12, Linda deposits $1,000 in cash in her checking account. So again, let's start here. The economy begins with $1,000 in cash because M1 is cash plus checkable deposits. Okay, so we start at M1. Now, if the reserve requirement is 20, our money multiplier is going to be 5. Okay, so that $1,000 is going to become $5,000. But again, what are they asking? The change in. Okay, so we go from 1,000 to 5,000. The change in is letter D, 4,000. Okay, so number 12 is letter D, 4,000. Number 13, what is considered the most liquid? Liquid refers to how easily an asset is converted to cash. Well, currency is 100% liquid all the time. It is cash. So letter C is the best answer there. That should be pretty simple. Number 14, with a constant money supply, the demand for money increases. How is that going to change the interest rate and the quantity of money? So here's the trick with this one. Let's look at our money market graph. And you got the supply of money and demand for money. Now they give you a hint in the question itself. They kind of give the answer away, in my opinion, when they say the quantity of money is constant, right? So if it's constant, then changing the demand for money is not going to change it. But if you look at it this way, you can look at the graph as well, increase the demand for money. They're decreasing the demand for money. That's my fault. Okay, so start over. My fault on this one. They decrease the demand for money, and what we're going to see is that interest rates go down. But did the quantity of money change? Quantity of money stays right where it's at. So interest rates go down, quantity of money does not change, and that would be letter E. Okay, so number 14 is letter E. All right, number 15, the Atlantic National Bank has $100,000 in demand deposits, no excess reserves. Okay, this one's kind of funky the way they word it. Let's set it up this way. Okay, let's look at our balance statement. This is the easiest way of doing it. So, liabilities, of course, are our deposits. Okay, and deposits are equal to, at first, 100,000. Okay. It says they've got no excess reserves, so if the reserve requirement is 10%, that means banks are going to have 10,000 in reserve because they have to keep 10% of that 100,000. The rest would have to be loans, most likely. Okay, so 90,000. Okay, so that's how you start, and here's the simplest way of doing this. Somebody takes $5,000 out of their bank account. Remember step one, okay, adjust this right here, 95,000. Now, how much does the bank have to have? They have to have 9,500, okay, is what they have to have, all right? The problem is, when the person takes 5,000 out, their reserve requirements are going to be reduced to 5,000, okay? So here's the way you got to look at this. They have 5,000 in reserve. What do they need, though? They need 9,500, so they're short by letter E, 4,500. Again, that was a little bit funky the way they asked that. You just got to set it up right. If you look at it this way, I think it makes more sense. Okay, so basically they're going to be $4,500 short. Where are they going to get that money? Either going to borrow from other banks, and that's called the federal funds rate, the interest rate they'll pay on that, or they're going to borrow from the Fed and pay the discount rate. Okay, that's where that comes into play. All right, number 16, we got a money market here. Let's see, what would have caused us to go from S1 to S2? Well, it has to be a Federal Reserve action because only the Fed can affect the money supply. And what would they be doing? They would be putting money in the economy. And so what would happen what would cause that? That would be A, purchase of bonds by the Fed, going to put money in the economy. All right, number 17, assume the government implements a deficit reduction policy. Okay, so the government is going to cause aggregate demand to decrease by doing that. So let's just say that way, AD decreases. The Fed wants to reverse that. The Fed wants aggregate demand to increase. So this is what the government is going to do. Okay, the Fed, on the other hand, wants to counter that or balance it out and make aggregate demand increase. So if the government was going to make AD decrease, what would they do? They would either spend less or tax more. Okay, so which one indicates that? Well, B is an increase in taxes and a decrease in spending. A doesn't work because they're not going to increase both. C is also increase and decrease, so that's good. D and E we can eliminate because that's not increasing taxes and decreasing spending. So we're left with B and C. What would the Fed do to boost aggregate demand? Well, they're either going to lower reserve ratios and or lower the discount rate, and letter B is our best answer there. Here they're lowering reserve ratios, they're not changing the discount rate, that's good. This one, they're increasing reserve ratios, no good. Okay, we don't like that one, so we're left with letter B. So 7. Now, there's a lot going on there because there's so many options, but that's the best answer, letter B. Number 18, an increase in government spending financed by borrowing will result in which of the following? The answer here is letter E. Number 18 is E, and that's because, again, that's going to increase interest rates. Interest rates go up, businesses do not expand and invest, and so you have less physical capital accumulation, new factories and things like that. All right, number 19, I'm going to be honest, I don't like the way this is worded. They're kind of assuming, well, let me start from the beginning. So, what's our formula? Real interest or whatever equals nominal minus inflation. Okay? Where they start is they tell us that the real interest rate is 7%, and we know that expected inflation is 3%. So, in other words, what minus 3 equals 7, this number has to be 10. Okay, so that's where we start out. Now, they're assuming here, when they say if an oil price in the Middle East increases the expected inflation rate to 4%, they're assuming that the real interest rate is going to remain constant. I wish they would have said that. It would have been a better worded question, I think, if they would have said that. But bottom line is, we're assuming that this is still going to be 7, but now we have a 4 here, so basically, what minus 4 equals 7, and the answer is D, 11. Okay, so 11 is the best answer there because that would keep the real interest rate constant at 7%. All right, number 20, which of the following is most likely to increase the real interest rate in country Z? Now, there's two ways of doing this because it's kind of a weird one. If the central bank purchases government securities, that increases the supply of loanable funds, and that would lower the interest rate, so that's not good. If the government reduces expenditures, that's going to decrease the demand for loanable funds, and that also would lower interest rates, and that's not what we're looking for. Let's look at D. If citizens increase their savings, there's going to be, again, like A, an increase in supply of loanable funds and a decrease in the interest rate. And if country Z introduces a tax on consumption goods, that's also going to decrease the demand for loanable funds and lower interest rates, and that's no good. And so we're left with letter C. You could also look at it this way. If we're looking at our loanable funds graph, okay, and D, L, F, and again, we're looking at interest rates. So if people view the country as a political and economic risk, they're not going to put their money in that country, and that's going to reduce the supply of loanable funds, and that would increase it. So either way, if you use process of elimination, A, B, D, and E definitely don't work, and you're left with C. Or if you understand the dynamics of international exchange, they don't want to invest in that country, and so they don't send their money, and that decreases supply and increases interest rates. So letter C for number 20. 21, the Fed institutes a policy to reduce inflation. Which of the following is most likely to increase? And best answer here is D, interest rates. Okay, so if they reduce the money supply, interest rates go up. All right, number 22, the Fed buys $100 worth of bonds on the open market. Reserve ratio is 10%. So let's stop right there. Again, our money multiplier is going to be 10. So when it's all said and done, that $100 that the Fed puts in the economy is going to become $1,000. So you're going to have somehow or another $1,000 in demand deposits. Of that $1,000, required reserves are going to be 100, so the banks have to keep 100. What do they do with the rest of it? They probably loan it out, so loans are going to equal 900. So you're going to have $1,000 in demand deposits, $100 in reserves, and $900 in loans, and that leaves you with letter E. Again, it's a little bit of a weird one too. That's all right. Number 23, in the narrowest definition of money, M1, savings accounts are excluded because they are not a medium of exchange. They are not 100% liquid and available for use. Okay, sometimes there's a lag there between when you can get that money. So letter A for number 23. 24, which of the following is true of the quantity of money demanded? And the best answer here is B. It falls when interest rates rise because basically if interest rates go up, if you hold on to money, you are not getting the opportunity to earn that interest and earn that return off of it, and so you'd rather save it. And so basically it's just saying interest rates go up, demand for money goes down. Okay, just like a downward sloping demand curve. And then lastly, a bank has $200 million in demand deposits and $150 million in reserves. This bank ain't loaning out very much, let me tell you. Reserve requirement is 20%, so they have to keep $40 million. Okay, is what they have to keep, 20% of 200. So they have to keep 40 million. If they have 150 million, how much is left over? 110 million. So number 25 is C. So there you go. Hopefully that helps. If there's any one of those that you're still confused on, by all means, give me a shout and I will go over it again or explain it. But otherwise, again, hope you all are staying healthy and happy. And until next time.